nervous because I'm here now.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin. Really excited to talk about the Ravens training camp as news continues to break. One of the big headlines from today that we want to discuss is the squabble between Earl Thomas III and Chuck Clark. So Glenn, why don't you give us some details about what we've been able to glean from the information that's come out of camp?
Yeah, so certainly interesting day 4 of padded practice today with the starting safeties, Earl Thomas and Chuck Clark, going at it and having to be restrained. Certainly Chuck Clark definitely had to be restrained by teammates to keep him away from Earl. And kind of an interesting dust-up because I think it's certainly not out of the norm that you see teammates, scuffle a little bit. They're getting tired of hitting each other, ready to hit an opponent. But I think it makes it a little more interesting when you consider who the dust-up is between. When you consider Chuck Clark being a guy that's considered by his teammates, and everything we've heard is that he's a mild-mannered. He's a guy that's, he's not a real hothead. He's a calm, demeanored guy. So a little interesting that he would get into it. And then Earl Thomas, on the other hand, he's had quite a few dust-ups with his teammates in the past. We remember in Seattle, on his way out, he had some dust-ups with the teammates and with the coaching staff, and it doesn't look like he has a problem holding a grudge, and that's the part that kind of worries me a little bit, is that they're starters. They got to work with each other, next to each other, and communicate. And I don't know, I'm just worried because Earl Thomas seems like the type of guy that might hold a grudge, and whatever he said got a guy like Chuck Clark, who is normally pretty even-keeled, to the point where he had to be restrained by multiple teammates. And there's conflicting reports whether Earl threw a punch, landed a punch. Not really sure what all took place because certainly limited coverage from the media. But, yeah, a little bit more concerning than a normal camp dust-up.
Yeah, you know what? From a large – thinking about this from a large-scale perspective, taking a step back, one of the things that concerns me is that how – when you start to age and you know what you're supposed to do, but your body just can't do it anymore, it's really frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Like your mind is doing it, your heart's in it, but your body just can't keep up. And so I feel like that's a hard pill to swallow for anyone, much less a world-class athlete. And so I feel like Earl is entering that stage of his career, and he's not doing so gracefully. I'm getting to a point here. So I think that makes him a little ornery, there you go. And, a little on edge because I feel like he knows that he's not quite what he was. Look, I'm not saying he's not a completely above average and incredible player, but everyone hits that point in their career where they start to see it and it's like, gosh, dang it, So that's I always think about that when I think about Earl because I feel like but then I think he's just kind of that way as a person, right? Like he seems like he's not the friendliest guy in the world and not very talkative and outgoing. So, but the other thing I thought was interesting is it sounds like it was a breakdown from Earl, right? Like the reports that I read was that he missed a coverage and Chuck called him out on it and he was not about that, right?
I like hearing that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my other concern too. It's like, dang, man. But I'll tell you what, the one good thing about it is that sounds like our offense is putting the pressure on them, and that's a good thing. Yeah. We really, really want that, especially from the passing game.
It's a good point.
Trying to take some good things out of it.
Yeah, I guess, there's that. But what worries me is that what you just said. When you're a veteran, you're a leader on a defense, and you're expected to play at a Pro Bowl level, you have to lead by being able to take coaching and criticism from others, because if you can't take it, then it just trickles down to the rest of the team. I think it's a great sign when your best player can take coaching, can take criticism. Yeah. It just shows that he's, a mature person. But what I'm worried about is I'm looking at some tweets here from, I believe it was Jason Locken-Fora from 105.7, that apparently there is, quote, mounting frustration among the Ravens DBs about Earl. About him being more punctual, more focused, not freelancing. And apparently that was behind some of that skirmish today. And some veterans, apparently there's a group of veterans that think Deshaun Elliott should be getting more reps and that Thomas is becoming a not-so-popular guy in the Ravens locker room. And no matter how you feel about Earl Thomas, if these reports are true, this isn't good. I mean, you want a unified locker room. You don't want a splintered locker room. And so I guess my only hope is that it is just one guy. That it is, and unfortunately for Earl, I hope it's Earl versus the team and not a small, faction of people with Earl and another small with Chuck, and then they bring. I unfortunately for her, if it has to be any type of squabbling, I hope it's one versus the team, and that maybe he can kind of swallow his little bit of pride and maybe come back and mend some fences. But I certainly hope we're not talking about groups of players versus other groups of players, because that could be a little concerning here, Jimbo, for a team that looks like it's destined for a great season.
Yeah, that's a great point, and definitely something to consider that I hadn't considered initially. But yeah, the one thing I'll say to your concern and your comment as well is that it makes me think of his days in Seattle, where Pete Carroll, I don't think he's the best coach in the world. In fact, I think he's the worst at time management. But I think that Pete is the best at managing personalities. For the most part, he's really, really good at that, at walking the line between gaining respect as a coach and having the trust of his players. He's really good at walking that line. And I think that's how he kept a lot of those fiery personalities in check. I can only imagine to have Earl, Richard Sherman, and Marshawn Lynch on one team.
Cam Chancellor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the list probably goes much deeper than that, but just
Bobby
off the top of my
Wagner,
head. So when you think about that, I wonder how that situation is being handled internally. How I'm not saying I don't trust John Harbaugh. I absolutely trust John Harbaugh, but I don't think it's a good thing. It's not a good sign if there are players wanting Deshaun Elliott to take more reps than a Hall of Famer. Like, even at that point in his career, I think Earl, I don't think that Deshaun Elliott is in the same stratosphere, even at this point.
Right. I mean, they just game experience alone is night and day. So even if there is some athletic advantages to Deshaun's game at this point, I think that the knowledge and experience far outweighs that. But the last thing I'll say is that makes it worrisome is, of course, that it is two players on the same side of the ball, which most skirmishes happen offense versus defense. And that's another area that makes it a little bit concerning. But hopefully, they can get together as grown men, sit down, have a discussion, and maybe he needs to have that discussion with more than one person if what these reports are saying are true, because it seems like there may be more than one guy that's disgruntled with his freelancing and his lack of attention to detail in this defense. So maybe Earl's got to come back and tail between his legs and maybe say a couple I'm sorry's out there. Who knows? We don't know the full story, though.
Right. Well, I'll end it with this. This is the question this is the real most pressing question about this. Who's winning? Mm-hmm. Who's winning in the fight?
Man, I don't know. Chuck Clark, to me, is like that silent type that you don't want to push their buttons too much. But
That's exactly what I was thinking.
But at the same time, a lot of fights are determined by who lands the first punch. And I think Earl's the first. I think Earl will be the first to throw a punch. And if he lands it, can shake somebody's. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in their mouth. So I don't know about that. I'm on the fence.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, you guys let us know what you think. Not necessarily about who's going to win the fight. That's not important.
Yeah. No.
But about what you make of the skirmish. Is it something you're concerned about? I also want to get your guys' points on Deshaun Elliott, this whole narrative that there's guys that want Deshaun to get more reps. Either way, give us your opinion on the story. Let us know what your thoughts are. Make sure to leave a comment. Make sure to subscribe and give us a like, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.